Hi everyone. Okay, I've just finished the series on Bobby Fischer, so it's time to start a new one. And a lot of people are asking to see some Kasparov games, so I've decided to make the next 10 videos or so on some of his lesser known but brilliant victories. This game was played in Prague against Sergei Movsesian at the Eurotel tournament in 2001. Movsesian is a very strong GM, originally from Armenia, but who now plays for Slovakia, and he was rated 26-31 at the time this game was played. Remarkably, given the level of Kasparov's play, it was played simultaneously with 3 other games against top-level Czech grandmasters Zbigniew Hrashek, Thomas Orel, and Vlastimil Babula. The final score was 2 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss. Kasparov was rated 28-38 and opened with e4, after which came c5, so the Sicilian defense, and in particular, after knight f3, e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, and a6, the Can variation. So then came some normal developing moves with knight c3, queen c7, bishop d3, knight c6, knight takes c6, bishop takes c6, and white castling, which is still well within the book lines. White is ahead in development, but black can build a strong pawn center for compensation. So knight f6, queen e2, and bishop d6, which was probably not the best move, although we're still in book, because it gives white good initiative due to tactical ideas. Better here would have been d5, immediately challenging the center, or bishop e7, which doesn't inhibit the movement of the central pawns. So bishop d6 anyway, and then comes f4, which is threatening e5, winning a piece, so black plays e5 himself, and then Kasparov played king h1, which is the last book move. And now Movsesian played h6, which is fairly questionable. Like, moving rook pawns in the opening should only be done if absolutely necessary, and that's rarely the case. Firstly, it's a loss of time, and secondly, it creates more attacking chances for your opponent in a middle game, and this game is an instructive example of that latter case. So bishop d2, black castles, and f5, and here white is gaining good space on the king's side, which will allow his pieces to attack. Rook e8 and bishop c4, and this emphasizes one of the weaknesses of playing h6 in the opening, because now that the f-pawn is pinned, white can put pieces on g6, and if the pawn had moved it could simply take, and this one can't take because it's pinned. So that's one weakness it creates. And then comes a5 and rook f3, which is a rook lift to bring another piece into the attack after bishop b4 and rook g3. And Movsesian played king f8 here, which again wouldn't have to be played if the h-pawn hadn't moved, because with the king on g8 there's threats like bishop takes h6 and so on. So king f8, queen e3, and knight g8, which is a bit passive, but Movsesian was rightly worried about rook takes g7, and if king takes, then queen takes h6, which is again a threat that only exists because h6 has been played. If instead at this stage bishop takes c3, then comes b takes c3, and black's best hope is d5, but then comes rook takes g7, d takes c4, queen takes h6, king e7, and bishop g5, where white has 2 pawns for the piece and a crushing attack after queen d6, queen h5, rook f8, and rook d1, where black will have to give up his queen and the game, so it's completely hopeless. So knight g8 and f6 from Kasparov, which is a very strong pawn sacrifice. Takes f6 is really the only option. If knight takes f6, then again rook takes g7 is crushing. Best play continues d5, queen takes h6, bishop takes c3, bishop g5, rook e6, e takes d5, c takes d5, bishop takes d5, and it's again easily winning for white. So g takes f6 and rook f1, which is bringing the only remaining piece into the attack with the strong threat of rook takes g8, and 3 of black's pieces are still undeveloped, and it's impossible to bring them over to defend because of white's central control. d5 in particular is being inhibited And central control like that is something of vital importance in chess because of that reason. You know, your opponent won't be able to bring defenders over to help his king more quickly, or at the same speed, I mean, than you can attack. So that's one of the reasons why central control is so important, among many others. And here Movsesian seemingly underestimated the strength of rook takes g8 and played bishop takes c3, which is offering the exchange of his best developed piece, a bad idea on its own, and perhaps falling prey to thinking that his opponent will immediately recapture, which of course didn't happen. Fritz gave 7 of Kasparov's moves exclamation marks when I analysed this game, and the first one came with a rook takes g8 check, which is by far the strongest move in the position, and now white has a winning advantage. After king g8, and now Kasparov executes the attack perfectly in order to cause the most amount of material loss to his opponent, with queen g3 check, king f8, and rook takes f6, which is the second exclamation mark, and again the strongest move. Far better than routinely recapturing the bishop on c3, or playing instead bishop takes h6 check, where black escapes and can consolidate his material advantage with king e7. So rook takes f6, and the threat is rook takes f7, which would be mate. So black played d5, but now comes bishop takes h6 check, and another exclamation mark, because now king e7 fails to rook takes f7 check, which is the fourth exclamation mark. Capturing with the king here loses after queen g7 check, king e6, queen takes c7, d takes c4, queen takes c6 check, king f7, and queen takes a8, with an easily winning position for white. Despite having a rook and a bishop against the queen, which can be okay, black has too many weaknesses to survive. Fritz gives an advantage of 4 points of material, so it's easily winning. So rook takes f7 and king d6. And then queen g6 check, and another exclamation mark, probably because taking the queen with the rook here was expected, but this move is stronger and more forcing. After bishop e6, then rook takes c7, and the threat of queen h7 means that white keeps the initiative as well as the material advantage, because king takes c7 is forced. Now comes e takes d5, which is the second last exclamation mark, and again it's the strongest move and far better than b takes c3, because then comes d takes c4, h4, and bishop d7, where white still has the advantage, but the game is far from over. So e takes d5, c takes d5, and bishop b5, which is again much better than taking the bishop on c3 for the same reasons. And this, the same reasons as before, the game is far from over. It's only slightly over 1 pawn of advantage to white in this position. So bishop b5, and it's nearly 5 pawns of an advantage. Rook e b8 and a4, which again is the strongest move, much better than queen takes c6, because then rook takes b5, bishop c1, and bishop b4 is best play, and it's only a slight advantage to white. So a4, bishop d7, b takes c3. Finally the bishop falls after being on pre for 10 moves. Bishop takes b5, a takes b5, rook takes b5, h4 and a4. And Movsesian must have been hoping to queen his a pawn, but Kasparov dashed his hopes with the final exclamation mark move, bishop g7, which is threatening a final and game-winning attack. The e pawn has to be defended to stop it, and the only move to defend it is d4. But now come the nails in the coffin with queen f7 check, king b6, queen e6 check, king b7, and bishop takes e5, which forces the reply rook takes e5. If instead a3, then queen d7 check, king b6 to defend the rook, queen c7 check, king a6 the only move, and queen c6 check forks the rooks. So rook takes e5, queen takes e5, a3. Black's last hope is to queen his pawn, but Kasparov was quick to ensure that wasn't possible. With queen d5 check, king b8, c takes d4, a2, queen b3 check, king c7, queen c3 check, king d7, queen a1. And after king d6 and c4, Movsesian resigned because it's completely hopeless. So a great game from Kasparov to start a new series. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments or thoughts. Thanks very much.